Morning, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Logic, Deductive, and Inductive Reasoning. We are already at our 15th week, and for week 15, our topic is about eduction. So for this week, we will define the types of eduction, especially define again logical arguments, and also compare and contrast the different types of eduction, which is a conversion. We also have obversion and contraposition and inversion. So let's proceed to our lesson. So for this week 15, I will show you some video in order for us to further understand our lesson for week 15.
Hi, welcome to topic deduction. To begin with our discussion, let us define what is deduction first. Deduction is the process of drawing out implied meanings that is contained completely in a given proposition. It expresses plainly in another proposition a meaning that is contained completely in a given proposition. For example, no Christian is a non-believer of Jesus Christ. If the proposition is correct, then it is also correct to say that every Christian is a believer of Jesus Christ. There are four kinds of deduction, namely oversion, conversion, contraposition, and inversion. We will discuss the four kinds of deduction in another video. Thank you. Hi, welcome to this video on conversion. To begin with our discussion, let us define conversion. Conversion is a process whereby from a given proposition called the converted, we derive a proposition called the converse, whose subject is the original predicate and whose predicate is the original subject. To put it simply, to convert is to interchange the subject and the predicate terms of the proposition. There are three rules of conversion. Rule number 1, interchange the subject and the predicate term. For example, no man is an immortal being. In this proposition, you have the term man as the subject and the term immortal as the predicate term. This is our converted. In our converse, we must interchange these two terms. That's why we have converse, no immortal being is a man. Rule number 2, retain the quality of the copula. If the converted is negative, the converse must be negative. If it is positive, the converse is positive. For example, every Christian is a believer of Jesus Christ. This proposition is an affirmative or positive proposition. So in our converse, it should be retained. That's why we have the converse proposition, some believers of Jesus Christ is a Christian, whose quality of the copula is retained. Rule number 3, do not overextend any term. This means that no term which is only particular in the converted may be universal in the converse. For example, every Christian is a believer of Jesus Christ. So we have a subject term Christian that is universal and the predicate term particular. In our converse, we must make it sure that these terms are particular so as not to overextend them. So we have believers, particular, and Christian, particular. The simple conversion of E and I proposition. An E proposition converts simply to an E proposition. For example, no cat is a dog. Our converse would be no dog is a cat. And I proposition converts to I proposition. So we have some politicians are greedy people, and our converse would be some greedy people are politicians. The truth value of the conversion of the E and I proposition. The conversion of E and I propositions merely interchange the S and the P without affecting a change in what is being asserted. That's why, for this reason, the truth value of the converse of E or I is the same as that of the converted. The partial conversion of an A proposition. When an A proposition is converted, the extension of the converse is limited. A converts to I. The reason for this is that an A proposition is an affirmative proposition. Consequently, its predicate is particular. This predicate term, when used as a subject of the converse, must be taken as particular. Otherwise, there would be an overextension of the predicate term. For example, every Christian is a believer of Jesus Christ. So we have subject term that is universal and the predicate term that is particular. In the converse, if we will convert it into an A proposition, then there will be an overextension. So it has to be a limited, an I proposition. So we have some believers of Jesus Christ as a Christian. So we have a particular subject term and a particular predicate term. The truth value of the conversion of an A proposition. It does not only affect a change in the positions of S and the P, but also a change in the quantity of the proposition. The relation between A and its converse, which is I, is similar to that of the subaltern. So, we can apply the law of subalternation in determining the truth value of the given proposition. The law of subalternation says that the truth of the first implies the truth of the second, but not conversely. An O proposition is inconvertible. To illustrate, the converted is some fruits are not mangoes. And it is wrong to say in our converse that some mangoes are not fruits. And besides, there is a violation of rule number 3. There is an overextension of the term. Thank you. Welcome to this video on contraposition. To begin with our discussion, let us define contraposition. Contraposition is the proposition that is inferred from the given proposition whose subject term of the partial contrapositive is the contradictory of the original predicate, but whose predicate term is the same as the original subject. The other contraposition is the full contrapositive, whose subject term is the contradictory of the given predicate, and whose predicate term is the contradictory of the given subject. In the next slide, we will illustrate this definition using the template of contraposition. And for this discussion, we will use letter Q as the symbol of the contradictory predicate and letter Z to represent the contradictory subject. So our given is SCP, and that's the contraponent. And you have the partial contrapositive. So in the partial contrapositive, the predicate of the given is contradicted and became the subject of the partial contrapositive, and there is no change in the subject. And in the full contrapositive, all you have to do is to contradict the predicate of the partial contrapositive. That's why you have letter Z, and this partial predicate of the partial contrapositive is actually the original subject of the given proposition. And now, let's have the process of contraposition. So it begins with a given proposition. And this given proposition is overted. And the obverse is converted. And the result is the partial contrapositive or the PC. And when this converse is overted, then you'll have the full contrapositive or the FC. So in the next slide, we will apply this process. And by the way, in an I proposition or the I proposition cannot be validly consupposed. So we have now the application of the process. So again, we will start with the given. And our example is all Cebuanos are Filipinos. Then this proposition is overted. And you'll have no Cebuanos are non-Filipinos. And this obverse will be converted. So that's why you have no non-Filipinos are Cebuanos as the partial contrapositive. Then we will overt this proposition and we'll have all Filipinos, all non-Filipinos are non-Cebuanos as the full contrapositive. The truth value of A and O propositions. The partial and the full contrapositive of A and O propositions have the same quantity as the given propositions. But by the rules of oversum and conversion, the truth value of the derived contrapositive is the same as that of the given proposition. So to apply the truth value of the proposition, if it is correct to say that all Cebuanos are Filipinos, it is also correct to say that no non-Filipinos are Cebuanos and all non-Filipinos are non-Cebuanos. The truth value of an E proposition. The law of subalternation is applied in determining the truth value of the partial and full contrapositive of an E proposition. So to recall, the law of subalternation says that the truth of the first implies the truth of the second, but not conversely, meaning the other way around is not applicable or doubtful. So to apply the truth value of an E proposition, so we'll have the given again. If it is correct to say that no dog is a cat, it's also correct to say that some non-cats are dogs. And it's also correct to say that some non-cats are not non-dogs. But the law of subalternation say that if the subaltern are correct, the given is not necessarily correct. It's doubtful. Hi! Welcome to this video on inversion. To begin with our discussion, let us define inversion using the template of inversion. In inversion, the given proposition is called the inverted. Then you have the given subject, copula, and the predicate. If you're going to invert this given proposition, then you'll have contradictory subject term, copula, and predicate. And this is for the partial inverse. Now, letter Z is used to represent the contradictory subject term for this discussion. Now, if you will invert this again, then you'll have contradictory subject term, copula, and contradictory predicate term. So, letter Q is used to represent the contradictory predicate term for the purpose of this discussion. So, that's the template of inversion. So what is inversion is all about? The partial inverse of a given proposition is one whose subject is the contradictory of the given subject, but whose predicate is the same as the given predicate. So as you can see in the partial inverse, the subject term of the given proposition is contradicted, while the predicate term is retained. On the other hand, full inverse is an inferred proposition whose subject and predicate term are contradictories of the given subject and predicate. So you can see in the full inverse wherein both the subject and the predicate of the full inverse are contradictories of the given proposition. Inversion also involves a series of inversion and conversion processes. The inversion of an A proposition begins with conversion, while the inversion of an E proposition begins with conversion. On the other hand, I and O propositions cannot be validly inverted. The inversion process of an A proposition begins with the given proposition. Then you invert the given proposition, then convert the obverse, then overt the converse, then convert the obverse, and you have the full inverse, and overt the converse, and you'll have the partial inverse. So that's the process. To apply the process, so the inversion of an A proposition begins with obversion. So you have the given, then you obverse, then you converse. So for example, all human beings are mortals. So the obverse is no human beings are non-mortals. And you converse it, that's why you have no non-mortals are human beings. In the next slide, we will overt this converse. So, we have every Q is Z, then we convert it, some Z is Q, and we overt it, that's why we have some Z is not T. So to apply, the obverse is every non-mortals are non-human beings. And the converse of it is some non-human beings are non-mortals. And that's the full inverse. And you overt that converse, then you have some non-human beings are not mortals. And you have the partial inverse this time. So if we will compare the template of the inversion and the result of our application, in which the given proposition S is P is all human beings are mortals. We have the full inverse, which is some non-human beings are non-mortals, and we have the partial inverse, which is some non-human beings are not mortals. For the truth value of the inverse, if a given proposition is true, the inverse is likewise true. If false, the inverse is doubtful, meaning it's not sure if it is true or if it is false. That's all about Hi! Welcome to this video on ovation. To begin with our discussion, we will define what is ovation first. Ovation is simply the process of stating negatively what is given positively, or to express positively what is given negatively. In ovation, the given proposition is called the overtem, while the proposition derived from overtem is called the obverse. For example, every Christian is a believer of Jesus Christ. This given proposition is the overtem, and we have to express this in a negative proposition. That's why our obverse would become, no Christian is a non-believer of Jesus Christ. There are three rules of ovation. Rule number 1, retain the subject term, including its quantity. In the given proposition, the subject term is Christian and the quantity of the term is universal. That's why, to follow rule number 1, we retain the quantity of the subject term. We also have a universal subject term in the obverse. Rule number 2, negate the copula or change the quality of the copula from positive to negative or from negative to positive. In the given proposition, we have a positive copula because we have a positive proposition. So in our obverse, we negate it in order to follow rule number 2. Rule number 3, contradict the predicate term. The contradiction of any term consists in its simple denial. For example, the predicate term in the given proposition is the term believer. In our obverse, we contradict that by adding a prefix. That's why we have a predicate term non-believer. The safest way to contradict is to prefix on or none. It is not always safe to use the prefixes in, ir, or im because they do not always effect a denial. For example, the term material. If you will use the term immaterial as contradiction to the term material, the term immaterial could not be the contradiction of the term material because the term immaterial could mean something not relevant. And for the term legal, to contradict it by having the term illegal is not a contradiction to the term legal because the term legal could also mean something unlawful. The version of proposition A, E, I, and O. Proposition A overts to E. For example, every good teacher is creative. So the obverse is no good teacher is uncreative. By the way, we use the small letter Q for the contradicted predicate term for the purpose of our discussion. E overts to A. For example, no honest person is untrustworthy. The obverse is every honest person is trustworthy. I overts to O. For example, some men are physically insecure. Our obverse is some men are not physically secure. The O proposition overts to I. For example, some mangoes are not ripe. The obverse is some mangoes are ripe. The truth value of the overtent and obverse. Because the overtent and the obverse express the same thing, both have the same truth value. If the overtent is true, the obverse is also true. If false, the obverse is also false. Thank you.
So for your activities, kindly refer to your handouts. We have activity 1 only, total of 10 items. So identify whether if it is observation, inversion, contraposition, and inversion. So thank you once again. I will just post the video links that I have put in the presentation or the discussion for week 15. So please take a look at your Google Classroom. So I will just post the video links and additional video links in order for us to further more understand week 15's lesson. So thank you everyone and God bless.